I think there are moves to try to raise consumerism in China, which is partly based in the middle class. But in the last year or two, there have been some very significant shifts in the relationship to labor. For instance, wages have been increasing in China, even to the point where some Chinese industry is moving out of China and going to Thailand because it's cheaper in Thailand. So what you're seeing in some of those countries is the development of an internal market, sometimes backed by some measures of social support for low-income populations. So that is raising, if you like, the consumer power by state action of a certain redistribution to certain classes. And in China, the state of class struggle, because there's a lot of struggle going on and a lot of discontent in the industrial regions of China, and you see wages beginning to edge up. So there is some possibility of that helping to redevelop the situation. But the big problem was not wage levels, but the level of unemployment. For example, China lost 30 million jobs in the export industries in about 6 months. I mean, it was a real collapse of their industry. But the IMF and ILO had a report by the end of 2009 that said the net job loss had been 3 million, which suggests that the Chinese had managed to create 27 million jobs in 9 months. And then you say, well, how did they do that? And a lot of it had to do with this huge infrastructural investment, building new rail lines, building new transport, water systems, building whole new cities, and infrastructures of all kinds, including investments in education. So the Chinese have turned it around with almost a Keynesian program of infrastructural investment, and with some rising wages. The internal market in China has been very strong. But what you see in China, as well as in all of the countries that are not talking austerity, is you see strong currents of inflation. China has serious problems of inflation. You see serious problems of inflation in Argentina, and to some degree, I think, here in Brazil as well. So the inflationary problem, so they're likely to run into inflation problems, whereas North America and Western Europe are not going to run into inflation problems given their politics. So it's a difficult situation with one part of the world growing, but in a dangerous way, and the other part of the world stagnating. And the big question is there going to be some rebalancing? Right now, I don't see a coherent global politics emerging to do any rebalancing. So I think we're likely to see a difficult, volatile period of these distinctions and this uneven geographical development and shifting hegemonies of power and so on occurring within the global economy. So I think it's a period of strong readjustments, and it'll be a permanent crisis, but the crisis will be different in different places and mean different things in different places. See, I don't see capital itself has a clear path out of the crisis. Furthermore, even if there was a clear path out of the crisis, I don't think the thinking which exists in political circles would be able to take it. In other words, they can't, even if it was there, they couldn't see it because they say, we've got to do this and we've got to do that. And the politics of the situation would not allow that path to be taken. So I think that's the problem. The big problem will be, what would happen, for example, if the Chinese boom collapsed. If suddenly the infrastructural projects are running out, they have property speculation going on, they have a huge kind of property market bubble, very much like the United States had 5 years ago. If all of that, then immediately the demand for copper would fall away, the demand for Iron ore would fall away, Chile would be in difficulty, Australia would be in difficulty. In other words, all those countries which are doing okay because they're oriented towards the China trade would suddenly be in difficulty. And at that point, if the West, if North America and Western Europe are not growing in any way, and it's going to be very difficult for them to do that, partly for political reasons. You'll see, I think, a global recession. So I think for me, there's at least a 50% probability of a major global recession in the next 3 or 4 years. Well, the consequences of a default for Greece, in effect, they are defaulting a bit because the agreement they've had is that the banks are going to have to take some losses. Mm-hmm. So in a way, there's a little bit of a default going on already. Major default would mean the Greeks would have a very hard time of it. They would almost certainly have to leave the euro and create their own currency, which would make it very difficult inside of Greece, because the Greek upper classes have basically got their money out in euros in, I don't know, Germany or banks in Europe. So if there's a rapid devaluation, which would certainly follow any default and exiting the euro, then the Greek upper classes would benefit immensely, and the rest of the people would have a very, very hard time. But remember, in a way, that is what happened in Argentina in 2001, 2002. And by 2005, the Argentinian economy is coming back. What I meant is that if you ask the question, who benefits from austerity politics? What you'll see in both Europe and in the United States is that the very rich upper classes have been benefiting a great deal. Particularly when the austerity politics is connected to a right-wing agenda that says, thou shalt not raise taxes on the rich, which is one of the mantras we hear in the United States all of the time. You cannot raise taxes of the rich. You cannot cut the defense budget in half. I mean, if you wanted to solve the debt crisis of the United States, it would be very easy. The United States spends twice as much as the rest of the world on arms and on its military. Cut the military budget in half and you have no debt. It's very easy, very easy. The debt disappears. The debt disappears. But you see, you can't do it politically. A huge kind of cry would go up about, we're losing our military power and all of that. And when you say who benefits from high military expenditures, there is the military-industrial complex and all of the corporations and many of the people who are in business and so on. So many of the rich are heavily involved in all of that.